All right. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you're at in the world. It's Frank Spicer, your co host and CEO and co founder of Metafide. With us, we have Matt Cross, Big Worm, Serge Satora. We got Keyboard Yeti, our trusty mod, and a special guest today with us at the Metafide Plot House, um, where we're planning the next few moves. Company strategy. It's going to last for 3 days of pretty intense planning. Coming live from North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. How's it going today, Worm?
I gotta say, it's a whole lot better than that weather up in Connecticut. Enjoying my first morning here at the Metafide Safe House, and looking forward to some strategizing with all you guys. And great to see you all live in person here.
Yeah, what's up, Worm? Thanks, Worm. And how you doing, Matt?
I'm doing good today, man. I'm excited. I just got back from BTC 2025. Had a great time over there. Got a lot to talk about, so can't wait to get going on it.
Yeah, and this is the first time I think in a while. It's a nice cozy space. We can shout out everybody. We got Doge Empire and Doge Takeover. Great to see you folks. Jetso, Ace, Matthew, and then Ash and Jolzy. How's it going? Good to see everybody on the space. And for everybody that's listening later, we're going to be covering today's market opportunities and expected market moves. There's a whole bunch to go through. To recap, Bitcoin's bouncing around the 105, 106 area. We're actually laughing at it. That it's pretty good, but it's up 51% for the 1 year period. It's up 10% this month. And for some people, that's not enough, but I think that's a solid indicator of market health. So there's quite a bit going on today uh, in regards to regulation around, stable tokens, the U.S. outlook on crypto in general. We're just fresh off of BTC 2025, and I think good place to start is Matt. What did you see when you were out at BTC 2025 in Las Vegas? What was the mood, and what were the general themes that you saw?
Yeah, thanks, Frank. I appreciate that intro into it. Yeah, BTC 2025 was pretty different this year compared to the last ones. I would say this was the most political US forward conference that I've ever been to in the crypto space. I would say there were a ton of new characters showing up that I haven't seen before. Usually at one of these BTC things, you got a bunch of guys, wearing orange pilled shirts and flaunting about how much Bitcoin they have, wearing big chains and everything else, and just being wild. But I would say this is a more well-rounded conference where you had this political approach where you had a bunch of people who were family offices coming into Bitcoin. You got people moving out of energy and fuel into Bitcoin as well, into the mining aspect. So I got to see a lot of the mining, and then you got to see a ton of people from the U.S. government all talk about paving a path for a brighter future of Bitcoin. So it was great to see JD Vance, the Trump brothers, David Sachs, and a few of these other characters who are trying to create a regulation framework for us right now.
You bring up a pretty good point you just touched on. That crypto policy seems to be increasingly tied to energy policy here in the U.S. because of the energy it takes to mine it. Also, the coupling with AI and the compute power that takes. Everywhere that I'm participating in helping shape regulation, and like talking to lawmakers and stuff like that. Uh, all of these conversations have an energy component to them. And interestingly enough, people are also using crypto products to start to arbitrage and plan around opportunities around energy as well. So it's pretty cool to see all these things moving together. We started to talk this morning about sort of what we see as big potential news that could move the markets or create volatility in the markets. And Worm, you came up, you actually had a great point regarding something that's maybe not on everybody's radar. So let's leave with that. What do you see happening at the 180-day period that may not be on people's radar?
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget about this, right? That, there was an executive order that was signed back in January, and it was for 180 days. So if you count 180 days from when, Trump started signing, I think record amount of executive orders his first or second day in office, One of them was to come back with basically what's the plan, what's the framework for crypto. So that's due this month. I feel like with the activity that Matt is seeing at BTC Vegas, all the politicians getting involved, a lot of times you kind of get wind of kind of what's coming. And so I think those are kind of canaries in the coal mine in terms of, hey, this is going to be very friendly crypto regulation coming. So I'm seeing really good things. It's got to go to Trump's desks. He's got the right people in there formulating the plan, and you gotta believe that's going to create a pretty big bump or at least solid ground for crypto.
Yeah, and speaking of canaries, I hear a bird in the background there. That's not a canary, is it? What would you? What type of bird do you think that is?
I think that's I saw an orange-breasted robin this morning. I also saw a beautiful red canary in here, beautiful South Carolina. So
Huh.
it's one of those guys.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And Matt, what do you see as potentially like introducing volatility or opportunity for this month?
Yeah, I think again, if there's any type of regulation coming in for a framework for stable tokens, and if we can, enable some clarity where we can distribute, and power US fiat around the world, I think that's going to be great for the overall market. And, if we can just basically give founders the clear that, hey, it's safe to use Bitcoin, we're not going to put you in jail at the end of the day, go forth and create your projects. I think that's going to give people the confidence to start innovating in the space again.
Yeah, I think for a while people were just kind of afraid that if they innovated and stepped out of, too much in public, that they would get smacked down and potentially debanked. It feels like we're on the other side of that, and that this administration is solidly in, behind the possibilities of crypto and blockchain. So hopefully we're in a different phase of the market and kind of poised for growth. But I'm not even, I would say, cautiously optimistic, but I would say I'm solidly optimistic. Maybe not wildly optimistic because we still have to see, what roadblocks are in the way. But it feels like it's finally time to see new things. And I'm not just talking about like meme token launch platforms and stuff like that, but like real projects that are tied to real world utility for the concept of a chain of custody, a ledger, all the things that blockchain promised to improve. I think we can start seeing some of those products, especially around property transfer and things like that. And I think a good settlement mechanism for a lot of this stuff is, BTC. So I'm looking forward to that. And with that, actually, we've got a special guest. He's here at the Metafide Safe House with us. It's Payton Jonson, uh, leads up the DIY fund, our largest investor, friend, and supporter. And Payton, what do you see in the market right now that you think could move the market or could open up some opportunities?
What's up, guys? Glad to be here at the Metafide Safe House. Glad to be working on this with you. And I can truly say that you guys are one of the most exciting projects I've been able to be a part of. Nothing is more engaging than being able to work with a team and see improvements happen like just a couple hours later. It's very fortunate to be a capital partner and simultaneously a strategic partner. But to answer your question rather directly, I think everybody's sleeping on the Supreme Court, and everybody's sleeping on the massive catalyst of prime brokers getting their regulatory approvals. We're still very early in the Trump administration, and some of the heads of the agencies that he put in, they just like got their staff underneath them in like February and March, right? So all of that delayed decisioning usually comes due in the last 2 weeks of June, first week of July, and the big item that's going to unlock the absolute catalyst of money entering into digital assets is once the large prime brokers and once the large mutual funds that manage public money can start to get exposure. And we're starting to hear rumblings about that, but no one's like really pulled the trigger yet.
So I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I guess I'm going to. Like when you look at the Supreme Court here, do you think that they're inclined to look at this as sort of a rights issue, sort of a like a law of the land type of decision around property and ownership and freedom of speech and anti-censorship, or do you think that they're more inclined to pass the regulation into the regulatory bodies like the FTC and the SEC? Do you think that to the Supreme Court, a blockchain, BTC specifically, and the overall industry is like a concept of what people have the right to do in a constitutional sense, or do you think that they look at it more of a mechanical, like who gets what jurisdiction?
Yeah, in fact, I believe it's jurisdiction limitation is what will be defined by them, and simply by having limitation being set, that's what'll spark optimism. Because even though it's been less than a year, a lot of people forget. Last October, we had this never-ending jurisdiction expansion from the CFTC, the OCC, the three-letter agencies associated with finance, where they were all fighting over each other to regulate crypto out of America, right? And that's because they could very loosely define what they could do and then would try and go through everything. And a lot of capital has been sitting on the sidelines simply because it was a nightmare to touch crypto, because you would get regulated by 5 different agencies all at once, all because some employee, not even the director head of the agency, but just some employee within it might have some controversial opinion about your industry. That's a structural issue in the executive branch of government. So it'll be a little deeper. I don't necessarily expect the market to get that type of an understanding of law. However, within the large institutional players, it'll give them resolve to start deploying 10, 11 figures worth of capital without having to worry that all of a sudden their operating structure is going to be dismantled.
Solid answer. Way to way to come up big on that. It got to the point where I was starting to worry that the issue of crypto was about to turn into an intelligence issue, where they were going to start rooting out people with, opinions, classifying them as potential threats, and sort of, surveilling them. And I feel like it was well on its way. Now, in keeping with this, I'm going to just one more question to follow up. What do you think that the U.S.'s role in this to the rest of the world, being that crypto is global? Like, do you think that this changes things for the world's outlook on crypto, or do you think we're just doing our thing and everybody else does their thing, or do you think this starts to change regulatory outlooks around the world?
Yeah, so as far as crypto, right, there's two major drivers that are of interest to not only the existing administration but also the big people who are pouring 9 figures of lobbying efforts into this. Item number one is legitimate financial innovation through Bitcoin and the likes, where people view it as digital gold, or they want to set up a classification of retirement products that offer more leverage into a system to get better yield than what exists previously. So that's creating a product that retirees can own, or your average citizen can own. And then another step of it, and frankly, this is what I believe to be a more powerful one, is the Trump administration has very clearly embraced the idea that crypto growing is a way to offload U.S. debt into stablecoins, because stablecoins will act as the largest buyer of our debt, when Donald Trump is very clearly trying to make our interest payments as low as possible on those debts. So as a result, he wants to bring as many buyers into the market and make it seem like the U.S. has its fiscal house in order, which is a laughable joke considering Congress's bill that got produced. However, few people realize that all of the decisions from 2023 from the U.S. Treasury get refinanced between now and the end of November, right? That's many trillions of dollars that are all subject to be refinanced. Um, so much
which
so to where
includes two trillion in very near term debt that needs to be pushed out, right? Like
that
that's pretty
that
tricky too.
that's correct. That's correct. And everyone's used to looking at liquidity on tokens relative to market caps, right? But uh, very few groups, both groups in professional Wall Street as well as DeFi groups, consider liquidity of U.S. government bonds, and can people actually be up and be buyers, right? And the buy side of bonds is starting to dry up. So, point being is the growth of our industry is offshoring access to U.S. debt that couldn't get access to it before by stablecoin proxies. So that is the most politically aligned as well as national interest aligned catalyst to grow our industry absolutely as much as possible. Um, and it'll continue to be so over the next 2 to 3 years.
So did you just say that DeFi has some hope? Is that to move things around? Does is that an implication that you would say is a solid chance of succeeding?
Uh, I want to be nuanced when I answer this question. So yes, however, it's not DeFi as we know it, right? Whereas infinite leverage across anybody making it up, but it's DeFi within the Web 2.5 sense, with like a sprinkling of Web 3. Zooming out on the macro, it's very clear that this administration cares about how do we get as much demand into U.S. bonds as possible, and how do we grow an industry to represent that. And if DeFi can do that, which it very clearly is, they're going to encourage that style of growth. And right now, it's very clear that the stablecoin demand is the emerging world ability to get access to dollars where they couldn't have access to dollars previously. And ultimately, it's good for America to have that type of demand.
Nice. And so that kind of so I agree with that completely. And I think the existing understanding of DeFi is just the irresponsible, some mostly irresponsible experiment in leverage and just essentially taking chances. Um, I think what needs to happen, it needs to mature a bit, and it runs counter to maybe what you saw out there, Matt. Right? We're if I'm correct in your summary, there was just a lot of perp dexes and stuff floating around, right? Did you see anybody with projects inclined to sort of tokenize real world assets or sort of onboard treasuries and long term holdings into crypto? Did you see any of that or at all?
Yeah, I would say that's definitely less at the Bitcoin conference, because the majority of the Bitcoin stuff I find to be like 5 to 10 years behind the rest of DeFi. Because before, the consensus layer was very difficult to build on top of Bitcoin. So you don't have too many of those leverage products, but you always have a bunch of these guys who pop up with like a new perp dex on a new chain. And I could say there's maybe 30 or 40 of them that I can name off the top of my head, where I don't really see like any real world value in those currently. They're just, creating these leverage situations and trying to, extract more money out of DeFi and generate fees off of it at the end of the day. But I would say you do see some, like a ton of mining infrastructure and everything else like that at the conference. So you see a push to bring a lot of that stuff to the US and, maintain that over here and find more efficient, resources for energy as well. But on the payment side of things, or real world assets, that's definitely still in the few in Bitcoin right now. It seems like a lot of that infrastructure has been built in DeFi, and it'll probably remain there for the next, 10 years.
It also seems like a lot of this is going to benefit Circle and USDC, right? It seems like that's kind of like, if you take what Payton just said and what the objective of the administration is, like a clear winner of this has got to be Circle, right?
Not only is Circle the clear winner, but we're at the beginning of a massive S curve here, and that S curve is adoption of anything and everything stablecoin. We like to think Circle as being a large institution, or Tether being a large institution, because they've got roughly like 90 billion to um I think Tether's around like 140 billion worth of um um
Put this in air quotes too. It's like
Yeah.
when whatever you say, what you're about to say, this is in air quotes, because I'm not convinced.
well, my point being is, you take the combined market cap of stablecoin from Circle and Tether, and that's a fraction of the capital that is managed by BlackRock and other tier one institutions alike. So as those institutions start to get regulatory clarity to where they can issue their own stablecoins for whatever reason, we're going to see an explosive amount of growth in not only total stablecoin issuance for its individual niches, but you're also going to see an explosive amount of adoption for every downstream participant in payment processing, or banking settlement, especially on cross-border settlement, for adopting these items. So to answer it very clearly, like, the play to make in the longer term of a year to year and a half is, like, get as much exposure to the stablecoin sector as you can. Um, that's that's going to be the next wave.
So, not that this is financial advice or investment advice, but if you're someone out there looking for patterns, like, where where does the common investor in this, where's the money?
Yeah, man. Great question. In my opinion, if you're looking for a good trade or a good project to get involved in, the sector to look at um, is is the one that is decentralized stables in some capacity, where it's offering like legitimate value tied to some type of leverage product. Um, so, like, an example would be like MakerDAO. Um, right now, they're on a relative valuation basis, they're being valued less than what they would be if they were a stock. But they have a very legitimate um, project, and it's a matter of consensus changing and then realizing that's validated, and we can see multiple expansion where they could easily 5 to 7x from here.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think they're suffering from regulatory targeting. Like, it felt like the MakerDAO project was about to be hammered out of existence just a year ago, right? So maybe there's some, like, reputational hesitance around that, but I think that's right. I mean, I think it could have some upside now that it doesn't seem like it could end at any minute with people kicking the doors down, right?
Well, and when you look at what makes true profitable investments, it's betting on good fundamentals that have been beaten up um, by narrative. So you're taking a contrarian bet when narrative is at um, peak negativity, and Maker had that in about August of last year, and right now it's just kind of chilled flat around the same areas.
Interesting. Interesting. Anything to add here, Worm?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is Peyton and Frank, and a great conversation between the two of you. It's interesting, like what you said in terms of refinancing the debt and everything that's happened around the stable coins. I look at USDC, and I know, I mean, that we don't put air quotes around that one, right? A little bit more certainty around that one, right? Is that the consensus? And I feel like that's backed by dollars. and so wouldn't that drive the demand for U.S. dollars, which is what, right, Trump's trying to drive? Do you kind of see these two things as connected, or am I trying to be a conspiracy theorist here?
Well, I'm going to correct you a little bit. The United States is always trying to drive demand for dollars. In fact, so much so we structurally keep a shortage of dollars across the world at all times, so we can always issue debt into into that demand. And excuse me. So with that being the backdrop, what the administration is clearly trying to do is allow other groups to get access to dollar-denominated debt that couldn't get access before, just to drive interest rates down. So we know the demand's there, but the way
Right.
to give access to that demand didn't exist previously because it was blocked by a bunch of red tape. And Web3 solutions eliminate that red tape, while simultaneously driving bond yield down to some capacity in theory.
Clever. That's U.S. might be onto something.
I would think so.
Go ahead, Worm.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Payton. No, that's kind of what I was thinking, that they're, with the refinancing, you drive that bond yield down and then you get a favorable rate. Am I speaking the same thing there, Payton?
Yeah. The question is, can the Web3 industry grow fast enough to actually make a meaningful impact on the demand?
Right.
But the reality is that's kind of a coin flip. But what's very clear is this administration doesn't care, because they're just trying to bring any buyer in, period. And considering the fact that Trump himself is a DeFi founder with Liberty Financial, he's going to do as much as he can to boost the industry where his own bags sit.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know who
Thank you.
We haven't heard from our man on the streets out there, Yeti. What do you think about all this from the land down under, man? Like, what does this look like to you?
I honestly am just stoked that I've heard how to get exposure to the stablecoin industry. I've been wondering, like, it seems so obvious that that's going to be, like, it's already massive, but it seems so obvious that is going to become so much bigger. And I've been wondering how to get exposure to the upside of that usage. So I am stoked that you came on, Payton. I'm much less of a quant than you guys, so I don't have much to add to it. But I do have some community questions if we have some time.
Yeah, we could take 3 of them. Let's do 3.
Yeah, sweet. I would also like to say, you're talking about the irresponsibility of, like, leveraged trades, and I just wanted to point out that in between our last space, where you were talking about James Wynn and his $80 million leveraged position, he's been liquidated. I mean, it's
yes, that's way too much leverage.
Pretty huge. Yeah. So I'll choose. Just got to choose the 3. I guess I'll just start at the top here. So we've got Neil asking how we plan to address the convenience factor for retail users on DogeOS. So access to liquidity, DApps, swaps, and lending while partnered with an up-and-coming chain.
Great question, and I think we're in really close contact with the DogeOS guys. The obvious first answer is you can get exposure to market volatility and movements through swapping for FIDE. So we're going to support that. It's going to be super convenient for you to bring FIDE in and play in these markets just by using the Doge that you have. You come in, swap it in for FIDE, plays the game. You'll be able to take it out in whatever available options we have. Obviously, stable tokens, and you could probably take it back out to Doge as well. But yeah, like, I think that's the best way to do it. Like, it's also self-serving, but it happens to be the truth that you can now take your Doge that you've been using and play it in the games that we have and get direct exposure to market movements. We've seen some really great payouts and testing for people that are accurate. I mean, I think Matt had I don't want to say like 2200x because he hit it spot on the dollar pretty early in the game. So yeah, I would say obviously, um, that the other thing is there's a lot of other products underway on the Dojo S builder front, and a lot of those are liquidity style trades that you'll be able to make. So I don't want to give away anybody else's roadmap, but we do know that there are other projects coming. So we're going to build integrations with them where it makes sense. So
I just want to add. I
Yep.
just want to add on to that, Frank. Like
Yep.
Payton asked last night, "What's the highest ROI that's possible in the game?" And I was like, I don't know. we create this mathematical formula, and we have to do like calculus limit theorems to understand the ROIs. But I think the record is still held by Sarah, I believe, in the sort of the 22,000% range or whatever.
Yeah, no, I think that might be correct. Yeah, so there's that, and theoretically, there's no limit because of the amount of people that could play. So, if you're spot on in the 0th second of the game and you wind up winning, and it's a giant pool, I mean, it's whatever the total value of the pool is less a few cents, probably, right? So, it's in theory, it's a limit, right? So it's whatever approaching infinity if you can fit infinity dollars in the game.
Yeah, it is infinity in theory.
Yeah,
The limit as x approaches whatever is. Anyone wants to geek out on calculus.
correct. But
It's infinity.
For everybody out there just following along, the purpose is be early, as precise as possible, and be accurate. So it's just be early, be precise, and you wind up winning a much greater payout than if you're late and sort of right. So yeah, what's the next question,
Frank,
Yeti? Yeah, what's up?
Frank, one thing I'd like to mention just about the beauty of that setup is you get a phenomenal payout with only a 1x risk, right?
Yeah, actually,
But like what other product allows you to have up to a 30 I'm sorry, a 330x return with only a 1x risk? That's
no,
like
I can't think
laughable.
of any. But it is a viable sort of derivative, right? Like the math just makes sense, and so we sort of invented a way to fairly compensate alpha in a market where the market is competitive over a box time period. So it's a closed game theory problem combined with a limit problem, but the net effect is a really elegant, simple way to be like, put 1x in, and if you're right and add value to the system, then you wind up getting a levered payout. Yeah. Where are you at, Yeti, with the next one, buddy? Let's see if we can get through these two.
All right, this is another one that seems like they've been in our team meeting, but we would just have a meeting around this, but I'll ask it anyway. So we've got, when are we getting another contest, and when are we getting the referral system rolled out?
Well, we just talked about the referral system today. It's on its last lap of testing, so probably sometime within the next 2 weeks to our existing users, so they'll get a head start. And as far as the next contest, I think we're meeting with you guys to plan that out pretty soon, if I'm not correct, right?
We just had a meeting about it, in fact.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So soon.
Yep.
All right. Well, we got one more. Let's hit this last question.
All right. So we've got Ace asking, where do we see USDT going? So Trump printing stable coins, question mark, doing what BSD did, or worse?
Okay. Let's kick this over to our illustrious guest speaker here, Payton. What do you think of this?
Yeah, man. This is dicey, dude, because you don't really know. What I find a lot more interesting though is U.S. states are getting ballsy. Like the state of Wyoming wants to issue a stablecoin. The state of Texas is also considering issuing a stablecoin. So it's kind of hard to tell. what's gonna happen in the near term. It's clearly going to be a 4 to 6 month initiative from now, but it's very difficult. The item that is abundantly clear, though, is that this administration has absolutely no qualms with trying to push the adoption of this industry as fast as possible, even if it runs the risk of um, being a little too hot, a little too fast paced.
Yeah, it's great to see an inclination to over-index on innovation because it hasn't felt like that since the early days of Web 2. I think Web 1 was like that with open source and people building together and innovating, and then Web 2 sort of built on top of that. All this explosion of innovation happened. We haven't felt that thing until maybe just now, so that makes me very hopeful.
On that note, right? It's never been a bad time to invest in America, and what we've seen in the last 6 months is capital investment commitments, even if inflation adjusted, are at an all-time high compared to our country's history. Which, like, I just need to repeat that again because it's kind of a mind-blowing statistics. Capital investments into our country in the last 6 months are at an all-time high given our entire country's history. That is just insane.
That
And to
seems like
think,
a good sign.
yeah, exactly. And,
Yeah.
we see this in AI with, every major country and sovereign wealth fund committing, hundreds of billions, or in some case, like the Saudis, trillion plus to being invested over a 5-year period and, move on down the line. Like, to think that in the next 2 years, the expanding American economy, which is the most active economy in the world, won't lift literally all industries. It's nuts. Like it come Q4 of 2026, we're going to see that windfall into crypto.
Awesome. Yeah. And as we get to buckle down, head back to work here at the Metafide Safe House, Matt, you want to give us what closing remarks you got? Take us out.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about USDC and USDT and a future framework for stable tokens. I think this is where you need retail and people to step in and basically utilize blockchain and its immutable ledger to prove out the assets that you have, and what you're actually holding. And if people are issuing stable coins where they can't prove out, what they're holding on the other side to back that, those are things that we shouldn't accept into the space. And it's our duties or custodians of DeFi to push people to this transparency. And as long as we have that, I think we're able to avoid, those loopholes of people manipulating assets or putting more, tokens into circulation than they actually have. So I think the future is dependent on, all of us here right now.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. Yeah. Really great space today, everybody. You guys know a thing or two about a thing or two, and glad to be on this journey with you. I've never been more excited than to be building right now. It's literally the best time in my career I've seen to innovate and sort of bring the art of innovation to play on real world problems that have such a huge potential to impact everybody. So really looking forward to going back today, getting a bunch of stuff done, pushing things forward. And I want to thank everybody that's been on the space and everybody that's been on this journey with us. We got Ash and Dwellsy in there. I want to say thank you, and especially to our community. Couldn't do it without you. So we're gonna move next week's Thursday or this week's Thursday space to Friday probably, and we'll get that published as soon as we can. But I want to say thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of the week, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care, everybody.
Peace out.
Peace.